Good morning, Dr. Hemalata ma'am. You're there, ma'am?
Yeah, I'm there.
Ma'am,
Can
we'll
you
be
hear me?
starting. Yes, ma'am, I can. We'll be starting now.
Yeah.
Good morning to one and all again. Welcome back to the second session of STTP, which is sponsored by AICTE New Delhi. So, with the kind consent of our convener, we are starting our second session, and our resource person today for this session is Dr. Hemalata. She is a professor and head, Department of Food Processing and Technology, College of Community Sciences, Dharwad, which is part of University of Agricultural Sciences, Dharwad. Madam holds a PhD from CFTRI Mysore from the University of Mysore, and her field of study includes food science and nutrition. She has a very vast professional experiences wherein she started off her career as an extension guide, then went on to become a research associate, junior merit associate, assistant professor, and currently she is holding the position of a professor at the Department of Food Processing Technology for the BTech students. Ma'am was also a visiting scientist as well as a postdoctoral fellow at Iowa State University, Ames, United States of America. Ma'am has guided quite a few research students, and she has quite a few academic and research credentials and achievements to her credit. She was a coordinator for the study abroad program for undergraduate students to Iowa State University. She was also part of training on food and agribusiness management, which was conducted by Cornell University, Ithaca, New York, and also Sadhguru Foundation, Hyderabad. She holds quite a few awards and honors to her credit. She is a recipient of Incentive Award for bringing research grants to the university. She was awarded International Fellowship for Young Biomedical Scientists by ICMR, Government of India. She is also awarded Senior Research Fellowship by ICMR, Government of India. Her current areas of work includes bioavailability of micronutrients with emphasis on zinc and iron in food grains, factors influencing micronutrient bioavailability, zinc deficiency studies, value additions to sorghum and millets. Ma'am has also got quite a few publications in few peer-reviewed journals. Ma'am, on behalf of the Department of Biotechnology, the Oxford College of Engineering, we deem it a pleasure to have you as our resource person. So it's a welcome from our end, ma'am. And you can kindly take over the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I thank the whole team of Department of Biotechnology and the Oxford College of Engineering for giving me this opportunity to share a few things. And that too, this is a little bit, for startups, we are always into research. And now the trend is for startups. I don't know how much justice I will do today for my talk. I'll just try to give you some insights and then my thoughts about it. Uh, uh, Basically, we in the Agriculture University are involved in applied sciences. So, but today the focus is all on startups, and then we want people not just joining the course for employment in some other institutes or in the companies, but today the encouragement is for the startups, and people, students are also now being trained up in this area. So even in our university, we have started all this startup things, and then we have this what is called RKVY Raftar. There is a program where students are encouraged to take up startup businesses in various fields. And then we also have what recently under a scheme, there was what is called ideathon with novel ideas, and then we can enter into a business. So basically, here our focus would be on startup prospectus with relation to herbals and probiotic supplements. Okay, so this is the focus. Startup can be in any in a number of fields. today we just discussing.
Excuse me, ma'am, your voice is not audible.
Regarding the harmful and probiotic uses as a supplement for from the point of view of startups. Before we just hello, yeah, letting can you hear me?
Now we
Can
can
you hear me, please?
Now
Hello?
we can hear you, ma'am. Ma'am?
You can hear me, ma'am?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. So now, according to one of the startup gurus, he says, what is the startup? So basically, you must have heard of several talks. This is just to begin with. So startup here, he defines it as a temporary organization, which is designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. So whatever you think of. Yes, ma'am. So basically, it means the whatever the aspect or project you want to implement, it should be repeatable and scalable business model. So whatever the small business, it need not be it need not be small or a big one. It while small businesses basically it runs on the fixed business model. So there are various ways of running business. So this startup here, it means that it should be repeatable and a scalable business model. So now coming to what are herbs? So herbs, hope you are able to hear me, ma'am. Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yeah. So herbs here, our focus is on herbs and then probiotics business model, and then how these can be used, how researches can be taken up to for startups to take place. Okay, so herbs means basically any plant with leaves or seeds, and then it is used. Generally, herbs means small plants. So, but when we are using it in terms of food, or when we are telling it in terms of this one, then we define it as any plant with leaves, seeds, or flowers, and it is basically used for flowering, and then it is used for food, or it is used as a medicine or as a perfume. So this is the definition for herbs. And now we will just see the next aspect, that is the probiotics. So now we'll just continue with the herbs, and then later I'll switch over to probiotics. So now herbs means, so when you just want to take a business in herbs, so what are the points you should know? So first is, you should know whether this, from the startup perspective, whether there is a market, whether what is the market for this. So ultimately any business, it ends with the market, isn't it? If the market is good, and then you are able to do the sales, then after that, then you should know what are the different types of herbs, what are its pluses and minuses, and then you should try to see, you should connect with who your customers are, and then once you have come out with all those things, then you should know how to communicate that what is about the product. And then you should also, because ultimately for any business to run, you need the raw material. So you have to establish relationships with whoever grows these herbs, or who are the herbalists. And then you should not just okay, like this should be treated like a business, not like a lab scale or a home scale, this one. But whatever, even if you do at a home scale, then that also should be like a business. So y'all, business means from the point of account keeping, then recording, then regulations, and then taking FSSI or whatever the from licensing or registration, all those things. So the all that encompasses of the business aspects. Okay, so now if you just look at the market of the herb, then you see that India is considered the largest supplier of herbal extracts, and then throughout the world. Then one of the studies by ASSOCHAM India in 2018, it says that the market for Indian nutraceuticals, basically herbs are, you'll see what are these herbs and other things. So basically it says that the market can grow, it has grown, it can grow up to $18 billion in terms of dollars when we account it. So it can go to 18 billion right now. I think in 2017 it was around 4 billion, but it is expected to grow up to 18 billion by 2025. So who are the major markets? So the major markets, it says, the study says, the Asia Pacific region, which encompasses China, Japan, South Korea, India, Australia. So these are the fastest growing markets for the herbal nutraceuticals. And then another aspect is, say, allopathic medicine means we just take it until we are relieved from the symptoms. Okay, I have a headache, I just take a pill and then it will be relieved. But these herbal nutraceuticals, it is taken on a regular basis. I want to keep my health fit. I do not want the cancer to, I do not want cancer to attack me, or I just don't, I want my immunity to be strong so that I can be, I can withstand, or even if I come in contact with a COVID person. So that's why it is taken on a regular basis, these herbs. And then the WHO, it says that among the 80% of the people, they rely on the traditional medicines, or what we call from the extracts of the herbs, and then for their primary health care needs. Primary health care needs is like if you have cough, fever, even at home, immediately we do not go to a doctor when we just have some cough or cold or something. We just make some herbal decoctions, like we take tulsi, or we just add some pepper, spice, herbs and spices, and then make a decoction out of it, and then we consume it. That's how that has been going on since ages. It is not just today or yesterday that these things have come up, but since time immemorial, these things, these herbs have been used for various purposes. And then there were all, even some of, most of the allopathic drugs are also derived from these herbs. For example, the medicine what is given for this high blood pressure is derived from a plant source, raw folia. So that's how these things, even for the modern medicines, the extracts from the herbs are used. And today we have what you call, we have characterized, and then those elements are being, or those compounds are being used as a treatment in the allopathic drugs. But basis, if you just go to the history and see this one, it is the herbs that have been the basis for nearly all the medical therapy until synthetic drugs were developed. And then how the one theory says that this is called the doctrine of signatures. So what it says is they about like how the plant looks. So that is the basis for treating the diseases. For example, if the leaves look like snake or snake skin, that means it is to be considered that it would help someone who would be bitten by snake. And then if it is, if a plant is growing near a wet place, I mean, they would think that it is good for cold. And then if it has got a heart shape, then it is considered that it is good for treating the heart problems. Even in foods, you must have seen the walnut, which is something like a brain. That means it is good for brain. Some aspects are true, but that's how it evolved. So basically, the shape and all these things, it tried to link it up with the kidney beans. It is good for the kidneys. That's how people thought. But later, it was validated, and then some things were right and some things were just the notions. So those things, we'll just see some of the history. Only few, one or 3-4 examples I have taken for the history's sake. So why history is important? History will also give you an insight to start up for a startup idea. Okay, so just I'll just show you some things. This rosemary. So if it is, rosemary is a herb which is commonly used, and then if you see in the pizza toppings and other things, they add this rosemary. So this rosemary, it is a culinary it's a culinary herb, and then which has got an history of like 500 BC in Greece. It used to use. They used to use it as a memory aid, and then they also what they would do is they would put that rosemary in their hair so that they would remember whatever they read. And then then in England, so it symbolized love and loyalty. And then they also say some of the literature says that the Henry VIII, fourth wife. So she used rosemary as a wreath. So see, you can get so many things when you just see about the rosemary. You can just come to know that one thing, it can act as a memory aid, and then it can be used like as a symbol of love. So that itself can become a business venture, isn't it? So that's how this history also gives you so many insights into starting of some new ventures. So, but at the same time, it will also, you see, suppose you have to validate. If you want to use it as a memory aid, then you have to validate whether this is really going to help in the memory process. So how you have to do all that, we'll just see. And then another example is thyme. Thyme is again another substance which is used in culinary, and then it also dates back to the usage in 3000 years, and it was used as an antiseptic. And thyme, it comes from the word thymus, which means bravery. So ancient Romans, they thought that it has got very powerful healing abilities, and then they also used it to take bath, and then they would soak the thyme in water, and then they had bath, so that they thought that it would be a remedy for the poison. And then as I told you, it was also a symbol of bravery, this thyme. Thyme is again a commonly used herb. And then one more herb, this basil. Basil, we know is that it belongs to Tulsi family. And today we see in pasta and pizza and other things, which are the foods which our youngsters love to consume. And that is the trend today. So this basil is used. And this basil, it was thought it would protect from the evils. So that's why it was planted around the temples. And then it is also used as a it represented mourning, that means in ancient Greece. And then basil, it was thought it sometimes, some thought it was poisonous, some thought it gave that fragrance, and then they thought that scorpions would hatch with it. And then in Israel, they thought it would provide strength during religious fasting. So that's why they wore those basil what you call garlands, so that it will not make them feel hungry. So that's how they thought that this fragrance would help them tolerate this. I mean, they would not feel hungry when they wore those garlands. So these are some of the interesting aspects which you can ponder upon, and then try to see how we can validate and then use it in our newer ventures. And then this is mint. Mint is very commonly used in everybody's house, and toothpastes today are all with mint flavored. And then you have the drinks with this, what is it, lemonade with mint and soda and salt and sugar and all these things. And then this also, the ancient people thought that the mint had the ability to cleanse and refresh. And I think that is true, because we are still today, we are having that menthol, what is there in this mint. It gives that fragrance, and then you feel fresh about it. Any chewing gum you take, any this one you take, you have the menthol in it. And then that is derived from the what you call this mint. And then you have the peppermint. There are various types of mints: peppermint, apple mint, and spearmint, and various varieties in this mint, which are used for various purposes because of the flavor, fragrance, and the what you call the functional proper or the nutraceutical properties. And then they also thought that it was a cure for the treatments like the stomach problems, headaches, and then the strong scent what it has. So that scent, it was responsible. They used it for preparation of cheeses, and then they also thought that it would drive away the rats and mice from that room where these cheeses were stored. So that's how this mint was used in the ancient times. And then you have sage, another herb which is commonly used in meat preservation and for various medicinal properties. They thought that this would promote fertility. And then they also, in France, the emperor he decreed that every farm in France had to grow sage. And in China, it became like tea. You know that in China, the lot of tea is cultivated. So during exchange, it was like, sage was considered more valuable than the tea. And that's how, because it promoted longevity and it added taste. So that's how these herbs had one or the other medicinal property, or it was used as a symbol of certain things like bravery or fertility or something like that. And that was the belief or the custom. And then but today the things are more, they're going more scientific, and then we are trying to see how the properties or the nutraceutical properties can be incorporated into various fields and then used. Then now these herbs, if we just dig on a little bit more on herbs, we see that herbs, they can be classified according to their usage, according to the active components, and according to the period of life. So all this becomes knowledge about all these things will help you in formulating the business ventures. So according to usage means, so basically we say that herbs, they can be used for medicinal purposes, for culinary purposes, for aromatic purposes, as well as for the ornamental herbs. So medicinal properties means because of the active components in it, each one has got its own the usage. For some, it may be for headache, for stomach problems, for liver cleansing, and then good for kidneys, and then all this good for hair growth, such things. Culinary herbs, again, through it can add taste, it can add flavor, it can add the color, and also other than the sensory attributes, apart from adding the nutraceutical values. Aroma therapy today has become one of the ways to for many problems, including the depression, and then to feel good and other things. So there are certain herbs like you have the lavender, chamomile oil, tea tree oil, and all these things. They incorporate it in candles and such things, and then use these herbs. And then the fragrance what you get from these herbs can be used for various purposes at home also, to give that sense of fresh. And this one, you use that. Then they're used in perfumes, they're used in bath as bath salts, and then in soaps and other things, even ornamental herbs. So we have this beautiful flowers, this one lavender, for example, the purple color, it gives a very good look apart from its other usages. And then if you just look at the active constituents, there are several types of chemicals. These are all bioactive compounds, what we call. These active constituents are present in the form of, they may be aromatic. These aromatic herbs, they're used, as I told you, stimulants, and then for nerve soothing. Lavender oil or the lavender extract is thought to serve your nerves, and then it is topically applied if you have some nerve related issues. So, and then it also improves your mood. That is what, and by that way you can come out of depression. So that's how these oils are being used, which have been extracted from these herbs. And then astringents, basically it is because of the presence of tannins. And then these tannins, we all know that it is it acts as an analgesic, it antiseptic, and then astringent, and immunogogue, and homeostatic, styptic. These are all some of the medicinal properties. which the tannins have. And then bitterness is because of the phenolic compounds, and then because of saponins, and because of the alkaloids. And then some mucilaginous, that is because types of herbs, it is because of the polysaccharides. It acts as a laxative, it acts as a diuretic, and then this alkaloid containing herbs, it acts as an antibiotic, antacid, and then some of them herbs are also nutritive. That means it provides vitamins, it provides carotenoids, I mean the beta carotene, and then it provides vitamin E, and then it also provides some proteins and sugars, and then that is in the form of sugars, that is energy. So like that, they also provide all these things. So based on these constituents also, we can classify the or categorize the herbs. And then the bioactive components, if we just dig on, and then there are several bioactive components in these herbs. Well, they are basically different types. One is flavonoids. So flavonoids, they say that the reports, research reports say that there are over 4,000 flavonoids that are identified in the plants. And then they're also responsible for the colors of the flowers, fruits, and leaves also. And then some of the flavonoids, basically for flavonoids, if you see, the list is very huge. Sage, thyme, yarrow, chamomile, these are all different types of herbs. Green tea, hawthorn, all these things contain huge amounts of flavonoids. And then they promote human health, and then they help to reduce several diseases. And then flavonoids, what they do, along with vitamin C, it acts as an antioxidant. It protects the LDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol, what we call, from oxidation. It inhibits the platelet aggregation, and it acts as an anti-inflammatory and anti-tumor agent. So all these herbs which contain flavonoids, so they all have this bioactive compounds. The bioactive compound here is the flavonoid, which has got all these biological properties, or what we call health promoting aspects. And then the other one is, I told you, antioxidants in the form of vitamin C and vitamin E and carotenoids. These are all antioxidants, and you know the role of antioxidants. And then antioxidants basically prevent from cancer and from aging. And then you have the other group of bioactive compounds, those are called phenolics. So again, phenolic compounds, several phenolics are there. Some of them are caffeic acid, allergic acid, ferulic acid, sesamol, vanillin. So they all exhibit anti-cancerogenic activity, and then it also inhibits the atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is the clotting of the in the blood vessels, which leads to myocardial infarction, or what we call heart attacks. It prevents all these things. That's why the always, if you just look at the diet of a person, it is always said that nearly half of the plate of what you consume should have fruits and vegetables. That also includes your herbs. Herbs are basically used as spices. I mean, as a spice component, or in flavors, or as a salad and such things. So if you see a well-balanced diet, especially they say that Mediterranean diet consists of very healthy aspects. So if you just look at the Mediterranean diet, the plate of that in a Mediterranean meal, it shows that lot of herbs and fruits and vegetables are there. These fruits and vegetables, herbs also belong to this vegetable group only, on a broader aspect. So they all contain these flavonoids, they contain phenolics, and then today we also have the concept like a rainbow diet, where we say that you should have all colors. So these colors are all because of the phenolic, because of the flavonoids, because of the anthocyanins, pigments, which are the bioactive components that are present. So they also have these other aspects like these aspects like anti-cancerogenic and atherosclerosis, prevention of atherosclerosis. Then you have the next group of bioactive compounds, which we call it as anthocyanins. These are water soluble pigments, which you see the red color, isn't it? The red color, and then the pink color, then the mauve, purple, blue, violet. All these fruits, vegetables, or the herbs have these colors. So these colors are responsible for the inhibiting the LDL cholesterol oxidation, platelet aggregations, and then it also protects you from the heart diseases. They are also used in the treatment of vascular diseases and also the capillary fragility. That means all these bioactive compounds and these anthocyanins, several types of that, and then they are also responsible. That's why it is said that you should consume rainbow diet. Okay, and then now, if you just look at the phytochemicals, I told you there are several hundreds of bioactive compounds. And if you see these allium species like onion, garlic, leek, chives, and all these leaves are also used like herbs, isn't it? Basically, they contain diallyl sulfide or disulfides or trisulfides. And then if you just go to the basil family or Labiatae family, that is, it includes your fennel, it includes oregano, sage, thyme, rosemary, mint. All these things, they contain the compound called terpenes. Okay, they can be monoterpenes, sesquiterpenes, or it also contains flavonoids and then diterpenes. So there's so many have been reported. So this Labiata family, basically it is the terpenes. And then you have the other which includes your anise seeds, then cilantro, coriander, then sabbaski soppu, what we call, or somp, what we call, and then coriander. All this group of or the herbs of this family, they all have this active phytochemicals like coumarins, phthalates, then terpenoids. Okay, and then all this turmeric and ginger family. Ginger family. They have this what you call curcumin, gingerol. So then dairy phthaloids. So these things are there in this group of herbs. And then green tea, basically gallate and then catechins. These are the ones. And licorice. Licorice is that what you call singers use, okay, for clear throat. And then Jeshtamadu, that is what it is called. So this one, it has got terpenoid and then chalcones. And then flaxseed, today we see here about flax seeds. These are flax seeds. It has got omega-3 and it is a vegetarian fish like they call. And then these have got lignans. And then tarragon is another herb which has got terpenoids. So this is just indicative. There are so many herbs and then which have got several active phytochemicals in that. And then you have to have a knowledge of these phytochemicals so that you can use these herbs for various purposes. And then the health benefits, if you just see, as I told you earlier, herbs have got it helps solve cardiovascular problems, it helps in the immune system, and it has got antioxidant activity. And then if you just see the antioxidant activity, it is so huge in some of this, like oregano, sage, peppermint, and all these things. The antioxidant activity is very, very high. And then similarly, the antioxidant and apart from this, it has also got the anti-cancerous activity. By consuming all these things, maybe we can protect ourselves from today's what you call the COVID situations. And then we are getting exposed to several types of carcinogens. Consumption of these things can prevent so many of our problems. And then one example always our supervisors or our teachers would tell was the use of this turmeric, which has got curcumin in it, which prevents several problems in us. It acts as an antioxidant. It also prevents what you call these brain-related disorders like the Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So the incidence of this Alzheimer's and Parkinson's is very low in India, maybe because of the use of this turmeric, which has got these properties. So that is how, since ancient times, the turmeric is not being for all, most of every day we are consuming. And then the consumption, if you all have noticed, the consumption is just very, very little, very minute. I mean, we just add a pinch of turmeric to our dishes, isn't it? The more it will cause the other problems. In always, whether it is food or whether it is drug, it is always the dose that decides, okay, the problems. If the dose is right, then the problems are salt. If the dose is more, even water can become toxic. So the dose response relationship, it should also be understood here in case of herbs. Just because it is very good, it has got all these health benefits, we should not consuming it in such a large, huge quantity, which will lead to other problems. Anything for that matter, be it food or be it drug or be it the all these herbs. So at the right quantity, it will impart the benefits. If it is in a larger quantity, then it will lead to several problems. The other day, when I was talking to one of my friends, doctor friends, an Ayurvedic doctor, she was telling that during COVID, the consumption of these herbs and spices was so huge that many of them started that thermogenesis, that problem, and then because of that, they had problems of piles and such what you call such issues, digestive issues, also burning issues, then especially piles. So whatever these things are consumed, it should be consumed in a right quantity, what we call it as dose. The proper dose will give you the proper response. Okay, so then this is just to tell you the which are the different types of terpenoid. Terpenoid is a wide group, and then there are several types of terpenoids and where it is present. So the herbs that contain this active terpenoid. Caravan is one type of terpenoid. It is present in caraway, spearmint, dill. Dill is nothing but your sabbaske. And then this one, cineol. It is present in coriander, lavender, rosemary, sage, thyme. Then similarly, farensol, geranol, limonin. Limonin is present in cardamom. It is present in celery. It is present in fennel, that is soap, what you consume after meal. And then caraway. Then menthol is present in peppermint. Then peryl alcohol. Menthol is also a terpenoid. Then peryl alcohol, it is present in lavender. Then sage. It is fennel, juniper berry, rosemary, thyme. So like this, there are so many types of these bioactive components which are present in these herbs, which make it beneficial for our health. And then if you just look at the growing, if you just see how it grows. So basically they are classified as annuals and perennials. Annuals are nothing but you have to plant it every time. It will just, after one season, the plant has to be again sown and then it has to be used. Like these are some of the list. So like borage, chamomile, charvile, then dill, fennel. So once you harvest it, then again you have to plant it. So based on the growing. So this will also decide for your startups whether because once you have planted, like for example, mango is a perennial tree. Every year in the season you get it, no need of planting. But if it is an annual, then like coriander, once you pluck it and use it, you'll have to again sow it and use it. Spinach, all these things, no? Then you have to regrow those things. And then you need to have a knowledge of these herbs, which are annual and then which are perennial. So perennials like this aloe vera. So you just have to plant once and then if you just cut the leaf and then it will cut the plant, you need not uproot the whole plant. You can just continue to use it. Then bay leaves, that is this one, what you call, which you put it for pulao and other things. So that also, you need not plant again and again. You can just harvest it. Some of the things like fennel also, nowadays you are having varieties where you can just cut or you harvest the seeds and the plant can continue go for at least few years, not for hundreds of years. And then you have different types of mint also. Once you have planted, you can harvest and then it can continue to grow. So like this, we have to just know the nature of how it is grown, whether it is a perennial or whether it is an annual. So that because this is the source of the ingredient. It is the raw material for your product. So if you know the source, then it will be easy for you to plan for your startup. So for most of the startup, getting the raw material itself is a difficult task. So nowadays we talk, for example, out of not herbs especially, we talk of consumption of millets, which are very good for, which has got many health beneficial aspects, and then which has got fiber, and then all these things. And then the other day we were just the district administration wanted us to plant something, and then we all talked so much. But when we talk of a larger scale, where the production should be high, and then the production it has to meet several households, then the millet availability was also not possible for one district of Karnataka. So the raw material availability, whenever you're planning anything for the startup, you also have to look into these aspects, whether it is an annual plant, annual crop, or whether it is a perennial, where it is grown, the conditions in which it is grown, because we all know that the environment also influences the bioactive components which are present in these herbs. So the cultivation aspects also have to be looked into apart from these things. So the horticulturist or these people would enlighten you about how these things can be grown, so that the bioactive components, see, it's the same, this one, what is that, some in the Western Ghats, if these things or the medicinal herbs are grown, that same bioactive component may not be there if you grow it in Bangalore, or if you grow it in other parts, dryland areas. So, or it may be the rivers also. So that's why we need to know the growing conditions, whether it, and all these aspects, cultivation aspects also of the herbs. And then how do we use these things? So there are several ways by which you can use. Traditionally, they have been used in several ways. It can be dried, it can be chopped, it can be powdered, it can be used in the form of capsules or liquids, and then I extract the essential oil from that, and then that essential oil can be used in various ways. It can be swallowed as pills. Today, we do, if you just cannot eat, because I told you the dose is also important. So if the dose, if you're not able to get that much dose from these herbs as eating as fresh, then you can go in the form of pills or powders, and then it can be brewed as tea. And then for skin and other things, it goes as gel and lotions. And then it is also added for the wart bath. This is how these herbs can be used. And from, see, this is a huge list what I have given. I'm sorry, because I just wanted to show you how many ways it can be used. See, for example, basil, that is one herb that is of the Tulsi family. See, just it is just a list. Okay, so you can have n number of ways to use it. You can have, you can use it in pesto sauce, you can use it in tomato sauce, you can use it in tomato juice, you can use it in potato dishes, you can use it in meat, you can use it in chicken, rice, egg dishes, and so many things. Bay leaves, we use it in pulao and other things, isn't it? So that also can be used in soups, stews, casseroles, meat dishes. So like this, the list is never ending. That's why I just put it like that. So you can just take one herb, and you can see the number of ways in which it can be used. The whole herbs, or it can be in dry form, or it can be powder form, it can be the essential oils from these things, and then it can be utilized. Then what is important when you're using is, see, traditionally we know that some plants and herbs have got typical uses. So for example, mint is used in making chutneys, it is used in making juices, it is dried, and that powder is used in various ways. But at the same time, we should also know whether what happens if you use it in larger quantity. So if it is used in with along with certain things, there may be interactions, there may be side effects. We do not know. So it is always better to have a scientific backing. So that is where our role comes. So you have various types. You want to prepare a juice, and then you should know what juice from that particular herb. If it is time memorial, or if the literature says, or if the scientific data analyzed says that it is safe, then you can go ahead and formulate your own products. But if you do not know, then you have to validate it scientifically. You have to see what are the ill effects of it, whether it has got any side effects, whether there are any contradictions, whether there is any, if a person is an hypertensive, he'll regularly be taking drugs. So whether this interacts with whatever drugs that they consume. So these diagnostic or therapeutic methodologies have to be followed. And then before you recommend these things, suppose you are claiming that this herb is good for memory, then you need to have today a scientific backing. You want to say that it improves your memory, then that needs scientific backing. That whatever herb you are using, it needs all this scientific backing. So today, FSSAI, for these nutraceuticals or health claims, whatever you have to do, you need to produce the research data, which says that these things really are they are validated, they're tested, and then they have these bioactive components. Suppose I do not have all these things with the existing data, which says that now I say that garlic is good for the heart problems, or it helps in the stones, gallbladder stones. It helps like that. So how do I say that? There may be several studies where you have to review that and then tell us that these are the things, and then usage of that in this particular food is acceptable. So suppose you don't know what are the different components in that, then these studies have to be taken place. So the literature survey also has to be taken up. And then some of the traditional uses to scientific knowledge. See, so for example, this garlic. Garlic, we all traditionally we say that it helps in fever, it helps in cough, it helps in diarrhea, it is used against parasites and such things. But we all but the scientific studies say that it helps in this one, platelet aggregation. It prevents that, and it is hypolipidemic, hypotensive, like that. So then you have another drug, another commonly used, this one, marigold. So marigold, that it is used for liver disruptives and gastric ulcers. For such things, traditionally it has been used. But when you today, the scientific knowledge says that it acts as a healer. Only the topical application, not for consumption. And this St. John's wort, it is used traditionally as for burns, gastritis, and then it is today found that it is an antidepressant, and it can be it acts as an antidepressant. So like that, scientific backing along with the traditional uses will help you in developing the products in whatever form you want. And then see, that's what people that I told you initially also. These health supplements today are a big market, huge market, and health drinks are also coming up. Today's trend is consumption of these health drinks. So these health drinks, we just because they claim that not everything can be health promoter. So it has to be validated. It has to be thought of before the licensing has been given. All these things have to be taken into consideration, and then only it is to be released. And most of the things, one of these studies in Adelaide, it showed that these herbal medicines, what people take, it can also cause kidney failure, it can cause liver damage, and then it may also contain some of the toxic chemicals like the heavy metals, which react very harmfully with the drugs, with other type of drugs. So what I mean to say is that the herbs, although they have so many bioactive compounds, and then it can be used in several forms in everyday cooking, in different formulations, in the different types of supplements that are being developed, the scientific backing along with the traditional knowledge will make the business successful. And then because you are validated that really these herbs have got these bioactive compounds in it, will have several health benefits. And then, see, if you just want to take up research, because I learned that the institute also would like to take up certain studies. So basically, you just want to develop certain products. The next slide it is. I can skip this because I explained to you that this one. So this slide, it shows that how the research in this aspect can go on. So you are interested in particular herb. Okay. So then you try to see what you have to characterize first, the bioactive components in it, whether it can isolate, and then chemical characterization. Suppose you know that, then you can skip that. And then the pure chemical molecule, what is that component that is really helping in the what you call the medicinal properties of it. And then you test it either through cell culture studies or certain models, and then you can simulate. And then you can, if you cannot do all these things, if you cannot go through this talks, if you're not able to do this genomic studies or microarrays or proteomics or all this type of studies, what you can do, you can just with the data, the literature that is available, you can just compare it with this. Okay, this is the herb and this is the chemical nature of it, and then and then what are the properties of that, you can have a comparison. So once you know that, and then once you have formulated or once you have incorporated into whatever this one, then that you have to undergo these toxicity tests. So the cytotoxicity tests, it can be done through cell cultures and then followed by animal studies. And again, these animal studies includes both chronic as well as acute studies, acute chronic studies. And then later it will go to clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And then the product, you can claim that yes, it is safe, and then these are the health beneficial aspects, and then you can consume. So if you want to have a health claim, but today, many of the things, then in FSSAI, these regulations also, by literature, if you just prove that, okay, this is things, or some of the things like coriander, sage, and all these things, which have been used since time immemorial. And historically, it is proven that these are things. That is also one type of research. Historically, nothing has happened. So there exactly you're not going to say, but it's a herbal supplement. That's all. Generally, it is being sold or marketed. But if you want to make a specific health claim, then it needs scientific backing. And then that has to undergo all these stages. Okay. So these, I just wanted to share about these things with regard to herbs. The other aspect of it is what we call, then I move on to the next one. Later, I think after I finish this, then if you have any doubts, you can just discuss. And then the next aspect would be probiotics. So what are these probiotics? Today we hear of probiotics. Today we hear of vitamin B12 deficiency. We hear of mineral bioavailability absorption issues and such things. So basically probiotics, see, it is nothing but a live beneficial bacteria and or yeast that naturally live in a body. Okay, they are there in our gut, and then they are beneficial bacteria which helps in maintaining the health of an individual. So they are called probiotics. Prebiotics, that is another term. Prebiotics is nothing but they are the foods or which help in the growth of these probiotics, which help in this, which help the probiotics to thrive in the gut system. So they are called the prebiotics. So these probiotics are nothing but the live organisms. So that, and then basically live organisms that are naturally present. And today, but we are hearing of so many things which have been incorporated into different types of foods and supplements and all these things. But basically, which there also these probiotics, they thrive in our gut and give us the beneficial effects. And then these are some of the probiotic foods. Probiotic foods means here probiotic material is there. That probiotics are there in these foods. Like for example, your fermented foods, then your yogurt or mosuru, what we call curds. Then kombucha, that is again, that is one type of fermented food. Then in sauerkraut, that is another fermented food of cabbage. And then tempeh, natto, and all these things are prepared from this soybean. And then all your pickles, whether it is your lime pickle or mango pickle and all these things, they have got lactobacillus in it, which is a probiotic. And then kimchi, miso, all these things. Kimchi is again a product from this one. What is that? Cabbage. So all Asia Pacific region foods. So these are all fermented foods, which fermentation happens because of some of the microorganisms like Bifidobacterium, Lactobacillus, Streptococcus, Lactococcus. Okay, so like this, there are several probiotic bacteria, and then with those probiotic bacteria, these foods can be prepared, or they are some of the organisms they are there in the our gut, and then the foods, prebiotic foods are some of the things which have got polysaccharides in it, which help in the growth of this probiotic bacteria. These are the foods, and those are the probiotics, and the prebiotics are which help in the growth of the probiotics. So now I think I'm clear with these things. And then these probiotics, again, it can be this probiotic bacteria, we can categorize into different aspects. One is what like a drug it is used. So like you get the sachets, lactobacillus sachets, somebody is having diarrhea, and then they recommend you consumption of this lactobacillus that sachet. You just have to, that powdery like thing will be there, you have to just consume it. So that like that kind. So here the intention is to cure, treat, or prevent a disease. So especially I told you the best example would be prevention of diarrhea, where this probiotic bacteria will prevent the growth of this disease causing microorganisms. So that is the probiotic. It is categorized like as a drug. And then the other one is foods. So foods, they act as a dietary supplements. That Yakult, that drink or beverage, fermented beverages. So all these things, they may have probiotic. Fermented beverages means fermented non-alcoholic beverages. Like you have fermented whey-based beverages, fruit-based beverages, like that. And then you have the direct fed microbials. Directly you're giving that microbes for animal use here. And then those are consumed. And then designer probiotics here, basically they are genetically modified for that particular characteristics or functional property of that. So that is the designer probiotics. So the categories of the probiotics. Basically, if you want to develop a probiotic food, and then you have to have certain safety and regulatory claims also. So we'll just see one. Then again, the category, just continuing with the categorization, we call it as monostrain or multi-strain or multi-species product. See, probiotics are also a single species itself, like Bifidobacterium brevi or Lactobacillus acidophilus. These things individually act as a probiotic. But to get a probiotic properties or to get better benefits, some nowadays what they're doing, they're having consortia of probiotics. Consortia means they will see which two, if I group, and then it will give the particular functional properties. So that is what we call multi-strain or multi-species products. Synergetically, they can cause better, they can impart better health benefits or the functional properties. So that is what is multi-strain or multi-species products. They may not be just single species. See, traditionally the curds what we make, we take the starter culture from the previous day and then use it as a starter culture to, if I want to make curds. One of the studies in our university from the Department of Biotechnology, so they found that they just try to see what are the different cultures that are present in the common curds what we make at home, and then the yogurt where the known strains are used and all these things. It is very surprising that nearly 700 to 1,000 types of species were there. Okay, so all together synergetically it may be giving that texture, flavor, and all these things, isn't it? And then or the yogurt what is made commercially, they may have that consortia of that strains. It is the trade secret, so that you get that particular texture, particular sweetness, particular aroma for that product. So like that, they try to have their own cultures. So the strains, it can be either single strain or it can be multi-species, which they have. Again, it depends. While formulation, they will have optimized those conditions. And then if you just see the why we should consume my probiotics. So as I told you, probiotics, they are generally regarded as safe, and then it will improve the gut microbiome, it will improve the human health. So this human health, like it prevents the colonization of the pathogens. It will help in the it will release certain compounds which will help in the immune system, and then especially vitamin B12 is released by these microorganisms, and then especially for those who are vegetarian, the vitamin B12 is got from these probiotics. So because we do not consume meat and other products which have got B12. Vegetarian foods do not contain B12. So this is how we get the vitamin B12. Then it is also known the product, the substances, what it releases. So it helps in the regulating human brain behavior, and then because by the release of certain neuroactive compounds. And then it is also involved in the fermentation of this non-digestible carbohydrates, which keeps our gut health proper, the large intestine especially. So where the short chain fatty acids are released. That's how we can derive the health benefits from these probiotics. There are so many how it does. So there is immunomodulation by this probiotic bacteria, and then there is direct interaction with the gut microbes by cross feeding, stabilization, and secretion. The next slide, it is there, the picture. Then the host, it helps in the this one. What is that? It tries to protect it, and then it maintains the intestinal pH. It helps in the production of fatty acids, and it helps in the production of enzymes. These enzymes for which are required for functions in the body, some things. Okay, so that's how this gut health is maintained by all these activities of the microbes. And then now today, this is the trend is towards health, nutrition, and then all protecting from various diseases. That too after COVID, today we are seeing there is a boom in the development of what is that, nutraceutical rich foods. Especially you see Amul also has come out with different flavors of milk. Earlier we used to have that elaichi milk or badam milk and such things, but today in the market you're getting fruit based beverages, be it pineapple and then or mango and all these things with functional properties added to it. Functional properties in the form of herbs or in the form of probiotics, or inclusion of probiotic and herbs together, where it can be synergetic, where that can act as a prebiotic, and then this can become a probiotic. And then whey-based beverages. Whey is a byproduct of dairy industry, where a lot after processing or into paneer or cheese and other things, lot of that whey that is separated, that liquid that is separated from the solids, is going into the landfill, which is very rich in riboflavin and which is very rich in this one. What is that? Some of the proteins, and then that is being used for other things, but that amount proteins are also extracted and used for in baking industry. But today that so much of waste is going there, it is going to landfill. So using that and then fermenting the product with probiotics like lactobacillus can give you a health drink. And then today, when you're just, I told you sachets are coming, the known probiotics can be encapsulated or spray dried, and then they can be used in different foods. Like you can use it in chewing gums, you can use it in snack bars, you can use it in several types of food. You can have it as a coating to different types of foods, and then that's how you can improve the health benefits. Two, three of my students worked on these probiotics incorporation, one encapsulated and tried to use it in snack bars, so that the purpose of that was to enhance the mineral availability. Then one student, he tried to do it on whey-based beverages, where herbs were used, and then the fermentation with the known bacteria, that is Lactobacillus acidophilus, was used, and then tried to develop a whey-based beverage. And then another student of my colleague, she worked on incorporating this probiotics, and then along with the papaya, you know that dengue, for all these viral infections, this papaya leaf extract is considered to be very beneficial. So the probiotic strains were different probiotic strains were screened, and then it was tried to incorporate it, where again it was herbs, it was a mixture like probiotics, herbs, and then the fruits, commonly available fruits like pineapple and then pomegranate and such things, which also have other health beneficial aspects. So they were tried. It was tried to infuse all these things into the beverage and see what are the various health benefits that it can give. And then I told you, you can have various blends also, like how we do pudina and what is that, lemon. It's a common drink. Like that, you can have various types of herbs infusions and then try to develop different types of products. Then now, similar to the use of these herbs and seeing the, if you want to have the health claims, then how do we go about? These are some of the foods, this slide, next slide. So traditional food, fermented foods using probiotics, sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh, natto, and all these things. And today, using those cultures, they have come out with, several brands have come out with different types of fermented foods. The cultures are maybe from kefir. Kefir is again a fermented product. That's a drink of what you usually from Russia. Okay, so that drink, the cultures have been used to produce various types of other products, like using fruits and and then fermented vegetable mixes, which can be used as a food adjunct, or like how you use the pickles, or how you can use it like a salad. So like this, you can just see, for innovativeness and for thinking and for conducting research, you have lot of material. History is also equally required, so that you just go about it. And traditionally, because our food habits are all through historically it has come, so you can incorporate it and then make it same thing novel, or your own creative ways you can use it. And then, as I told you, this safety is also important when you're formulating the probiotic food, especially if you have sourced it from a known source, if you have, which has been well established, then these norms may not hold. But if you're developing your own, if you're screening your own probiotic cultures, then you have to see what are the safety properties, like what is the strain, what is the species, what is the genus, and then whether it has got the probiotic properties, whether the acid resistant, wild resistant, because it has to withstand all the, it has to, if it is all the food, it goes through our oral cavity, isn't it? So it passes through acidic conditions as well as the basic conditions, alkaline conditions. So your probiotic strain has to meet out all those parameters. If you just go to the ICMR website, the parameters that are looked into for to consider it as a probiotic, a big list has been given. So if you are formulating a research, or if you want to product to be formulated, then please go through all those things, and then you will come to know. Then once you have chosen the strain and other things, then you'll have to see the viability, whether in such a media, suppose you want to incorporate probiotics into a beverage, whether it is really able to withstand the conditions what the beverage has, the pH of it, whether it is able to multiply, whether it is able to withstand after you have consumed during storage, and then all those things, whether the probiotic is able to withstand. And then after that, the characterization I told you, and then now you have to simulate how it can suppress the harmful bacteria, and then how it will adhere to the intestinal epithelium, and then how the response will be, if it because of its benefits we are taking, isn't it? So how the modulation of this response can happen, and then how you can incorporate into the foods, and then all those clinical trials. So the clinical trials, again, like the herbs, it has to go through, so strain identification, then after that the in vitro studies you will do, then you will go for the animal tests, then you will go for the different efficacy testing. Efficacy testing, it is through different conditions, either cell cultures, and then again through the in vitro cell culture, then again efficacy is the human trials, and then finally you come out with the labeling. So that's how then why it the evaluation from there it ends into that particular food. So that's how these tests have to take place, and then only you can call it as a probiotic. The rules are very stringent because we do not know the ill effects of these probiotics. Not everything is called a probiotic. So the rules are very stringent. FSSAI has got rules. It has to pass through several regulatory bodies. Each country has got several regulatory issues when it is concerned to health claims, be it the herbs or be it the probiotic. That's why it has to pass through all the regulations. So the researcher has to keep in mind all these aspects. And then if already all these tests have been done, so Lactobacillus acidophilus, for example, has undergone several tests and it has been used. So that culture, it can be used and in different types of the products. But if you want to screen your own probiotic strains, then the strain identification from all genetic and then phenotypic, all those methods, till it is till the regulatory aspects, it has to be approved. Then only you can market your products. Okay. So this is one way to y'all. I hope you could catch something. And then if you have any doubts or I don't know the expectations were, but from the startup perspective, that's what was told. So considering that, I try to put forth my views. So I thank the organizers once again for giving the opportunity to share my views in these regards, herbs and probiotics. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or if you have any clarifications, kindly let me know.
Dear participants, if you have any queries, please unmute yourself and you can ask ma'am, or you can post it in the chat box.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon.
Madam, actually, I have a few herbal products with me, which is already given for arthritis and some other purpose actually.
Yes.
But I had given to many of the patients and their health has been improved. But there is no any like in Ayurvedic test, it's not mentioned. But I identified it and it's given. But now how to go about it actually, madam?
That's what. See, all these claims when doing, sir, if you tell that it has got arthritis claims, you have to take, if you just go to the FSSAI website for health claims for the products, nutraceutical itself, there is one different section. You just go through that website and then they will give you the, for the, like if you want to take the license and then if you want to register your product, there are ways to do that.
And second thing is
the documents that are required. Yeah. There for the nutraceutical section, there are certain parameters. So if you suffice all that, then you'll be able to tell us if you have documentation of your health claims, or generally you have to otherwise. See, for example, earlier one of the this one, what is that supplementary foods? It always used to tell that it is good for to grow tall and all these things. So, but when you want to claim that, then you need to back it up with the scientific data. What are those documents that they require? So if you just go to the FSSAI website, you'll be able to get what are the different sections, what are the documents that are required to claim it as a nutraceutical, or to claim particularly that is good for arthritis or that is good for joint pains or like that. Legal issues also come into this, sir. So that's why we need to be careful. We have to get the proper license in that when you're claiming. If it is just a general herbal this one, then again you have to just take the FSSAI registration. But if you're claiming that it is good for heart disease, if it is good for lowering cholesterol, if it is good for your memory, then you have to have scientific backing for that.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Sumana, working as assistant professor in microbiology in Horticulture College, Kirur. Ma'am, in TV and all, they show, no, ma'am, Amrit Noni. What is your opinion about that, ma'am?
That's what they will have given either as a general herbal supplement or scientific backing is there for that. Okay. Through literature, they may not have done the clinical trials or studies. But when you're claiming it is for all these things, definitely they will have the scientific backing. Otherwise, it is legally not correct. If you want to claim anything, this one, so you need to have the claims. Even Ayurveda special, so many aspects are there. So they all have through the scriptures, through the this one scientific validation, they will have proven that this is for that. So those backing you should have. I showed you in one of my slides that if you're either through literature or through your own research, you have to back up. That scientific backing is very much required.
That means to say that
most of the foods, everything may not be estimated. See, high in protein, we say, high in omega-3. Already such work might have been done. So we are taking that as a reference.
That means
which has
what
been scientifically published. Evidence
backed up, madam?
Yeah, pardon?
What we are getting in Ayurvedic shops and other shops, claiming that they reduce all the ailments, can we believe that? Can we trust that? And are they scientifically backed up?
If they are ethically correct, then you can believe. So today we see cheating in so many things, isn't it? So it is very difficult. So you have to have opinion of the known personnel. Then that is why I showed you one of the studies from that University of Adelaide. It showed that taking this herbal supplement, it can cause so many damages. So scientific backing with this right guidance, it has to be taken.
And then
some of the things are time tested. For example, Tulsi is time tested. Mint is time tested. So we know that it has been consumed since time immemorial, and then the amount also we know how it is consumed. We know that historically it has been used, and we know that for sure that it is right, isn't it?
The raw material is, but what about the final?
Final product should have scientific validation.
Because we go to shop and buy and we take it.
Yeah. So you have to see the claims. You have the regulatory marks on the product. Approvals have been given. So based on that also you can just go through that. Yeah.
What about probiotics, ma'am?
Like now FSSAI means that FSSAI has approved that product. So we are sure there is a regulatory component in it where we can tell that, okay, this is good.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay.
Ma'am, we have another question.
Yeah.
What are the various techniques available to encapsulate prebiotic along with probiotics other than lyophilization to prepare forms of probiotics?
So there are many methods you can, but you're just covering that it's too innocent. So that is what we mean by encapsulation. So you're trying to protect that whatever is there inside, whether it is a probiotic material or whether it is some mineral or something else. And there are various ways to do that. Okay. So you are using some where you can use some gums, alginates or something which is edible. And then you can go for spray drying or you can go for as you said, lyophilization techniques, or you can go for just a simple for lab experiments. We just use the syringe and then try to put it. So you have to, some material, coating material should be there. So that coating material, it depends on what you want to encapsulate. There are several methods. You can just review how the encapsulation protocols or methods. You'll just come to know 3 or 4 different types. And it depends on the type of food also, the coating material, and then what purpose you want to, all that, the nature of the food, the pH of the food, all those things. By that you can decide what method you have to follow.
Another
for milk,
question,
it may be different, and then for
how can we keep the probiotics alive in a dry product other than freezing or drying?
That's one. Encapsulation is one of the methods, and then that encapsulation, that coating material, encapsulation, you're coating it, the probiotic in some this material isn't. So that coating material, whether that is why we check for the viability. We check for the during the process, what happens, the quant of cells are there or not, which can reach the gut. So test the bile tolerance. You may have encapsulated in a probiotic, and then you are subjected and then until it reaches the gut, is it still there? Live cells are there or not? You have to assimilate and then test it. Simulate the digestion process and processing conditions also. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that valuable talk. Dr. Ajita could kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
On behalf of the Oxford College of Engineering and Department of Biotechnology, I take up the privilege to propose the vote of thanks. We wholeheartedly thank you, ma'am, for this great explanation about herbs and probiotics. I hope the audience have got enlightened with your informative talk. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I could convey some message and that would be useful. Thank you so much. Anytime, any information you require, you can just write to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all the team of biotechnology. Manjunath sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Shall I end, madam?
Yes, ma'am. You may kindly exit, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Participants, we are officially ending this session 2 of day 2. We would be starting up the next session at 2 o'clock. So kindly join this session using that particular link whatever has been sent to you. Thank you.